Welcome back to our podcast, Occupational Therapy, Live and Practice. I am Femi.
And I'm Kenny. Thank you, everybody. Once again, we would always say thank you. Don't get tired of receiving our thanks. You are part of the reasons why we keep going on this. And as little or as much as anyone that is watching, we are grateful for your support and love, the sharing, the likes, the comments as well. This is episode 8, and this one is a heavy one, but an important one as well.
Yeah, we're talking about practicing during one of the most uncertain periods in recent history, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, before we go into a little bit of that, it's just to we were talking about having life stable, figuring things out, managing career, aspirations, family, responsibilities, all together, all in one. We talked about how we were stable. We had it all down, had a lot of long-term plans as well,
Yeah.
um, to start building, for example, like having a permanent house and all of that, joining cooperative, just trying to chase this goal that we set for ourselves. Life had a different story for us,
Yeah.
and COVID came about.
Hmm. Hmm. So when COVID hit, everything almost came to a standstill for us. Everything just changed overnight. And,
Hmm.
to say a little, we, at first, we didn't think it was going to be a serious issue. We all know it started in 2019, and we were hearing reports across the entire earth about an outbreak of a new virus that has no cure, or everyone has to, be safe wherever you are. There were so many projection about Africa. If this gets to Africa, people will be dropping dead on the street. Um, all right. Many people were still living in that denial. Oh no, this is not going to affect us. I mean, remember Ebola? It didn't get worse after all. And then what happened next was what we are going to start talking about now. It was a
Yeah,
nightmare.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there has been so many disasters, epidemic, pandemic, whatever it is, all around the world, where it really didn't, at least in the modern day era, we really didn't see the effect in the Nigerian space, where we're talking
Yeah,
about lockdown, all of that. We barely experience natural disasters back
that's
home.
right.
Obviously, we have the rain that come down that causes flooding and all, but we're not talking about the earthquakes or the tsunamis or the hurricanes.
Cyclone. Yeah,
All of
yeah,
that don't really happen back home. Even the Ebola that you mentioned started in Africa,
yeah,
and the effect of it wasn't really as widespread as what COVID made the place to look like. And I
yeah.
think it brought that uncertainty just overnight.
Mm,
The the fear, the restrictions that came with it, how public and how the media put this virus
yeah,
was huge. It affected everything.
yeah,
And for us that were just like becoming very stable, have this whole plan laid out for ourselves, and it just affected that part of personal life as well as professional practice.
yeah. The first reaction, I was tracking the global record of death tolls, and also was looking at the reading up things about virus generally. Of course, we know we don't have any specific medication to treat virus. They will say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
viral infection, let it run its course and just manage the
Yeah.
symptoms. So
Yeah.
symptoms management were actually the basic thing that, they were doing across the world at that time. And gradually it started coming to Nigeria. You remember daily they make this report, the number of infection in the isolation centers across Nigeria, and the number of deaths, the number of those discharged and they are free of infection. You know, uh, the reaction was, okay, it's coming. What are we going to do? What's going to happen to our
I mean,
practice?
yeah, one of my first reaction is just like the media, it was scary.
Yeah.
It was like i- in Nigeria, we're not that great with data. We are not that great with tracking things. You- we are we are still far behind in the digital space compared to the rest of majority of the developed world at the time. So my first reaction was, how would we be able to track this? And it was it was a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah.
We I had my baby, as in I had my first child at the time as well, was just like a year or two older. And it was just scary because you don't want this precious soul that is their immune system is not that great. Adults are
Mm,
dropping dead. Um, God rest their soul at the time, and the death toll kept on increasing, and you're thinking, I have to protect every other humans around me.
mm,
So that was it. And also just to think about it now, private practice almost stopped during COVID.
mm,
It was it was a bit of a difficulty, especially when you work in a place where an isolation center was
yeah.
established or was placed, and it was all over the news.
Mm,
Everybody was scared of COVID.
yeah. Yeah.
And nobody wanted you to come close to them, especially if you move around people that
Yeah.
that
I remember
that had COVID.
always getting home, after work, and then at the door, I will have to put all my dress and my shoes and, wrap it in a bag. And then they will take it down to the washing
Yeah,
machine and everything. So it was,
yeah.
no, and that safety concern was, something that brought fear into the mind of especially my parents. You walk in the hospital and we were hearing on television, I mean, watching on TV, hearing on over the radio, and that people are dying or whatever it is that is happening to them. And looking at the contact tracing that they said they were doing, and some people were now sabotaging the contact tracing. People would give
Mm,
wrong address while on the plane, and then they would not be able to trace them. And those who sat near them would complain of symptoms and things like that. It became chaotic, apart from the fact that we have isolation center in the hospital where we worked back then. The whole issue of not trusting people, then the next person sitting to you on a bus might be having symptoms that you don't know. So everyone, we were so suspicious of each other. um the term they used that time, if I can remember, was
distant.
social distance. Yes. It wa- yeah, yeah,
It was also just to think about it at the time as well. I was feeling very heavy around that time about our patients, to prevent the
mm,
conditioning as well as to aid improvement. And
yeah,
now all of a sudden we are in this space where they have to decide whether they want to come into this area where there's a possibility of having COVID,
yeah,
even before the lockdown, um, or they have to stay home and just is them relating between accepting the conditioning or risking COVID
yeah,
situation of a thing. And that was really, really a very hard thing to think about, and
yeah,
being in that kind of position to make those kind of decision as parents or relatives of um, people with the kind of conditions that we see. But
Yeah.
you know, it was really hard, and it just felt unpredictable all of a sudden. And then there
Yeah.
comes lockdown. Nigeria decided to lock it all down.
Yeah. From from the border to the places of work, we couldn't work from home because we have to have contact with our patients. And the most vulnerable population then were the elderly and the children. And these
Mm-hmm.
were the two extreme group of people that they were dealing with. You know, you were in the pediatric section at that time. I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was in neurosurgery, and of course,
Mm.
you would not leave these people in bed, or someone with spinal cord injury for 2 days, 3 days. They stand the risk of developing DVT and a lot of deconditioning. And some of them with high level injury uh, will start to have respiratory problem when they are not moving their muscles, they are not changing their position as they should regularly. So this became a huge burden, as
Yeah.
Kenny said, that we had to, apart from being professionals, we also are compassionate individuals when it comes to our area of practice. So that would not stop us from going to work, risking it all to make sure we uh, render the services that was needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we know how it was during that lockdown period. Everywhere else as well, like the NHS staffs were still going to work. You see on the TV, on the internet at the time, these NHS workers being applauded every day when they step
Yeah.
out of their house, their neighbors appreciating all of the work they did. Everywhere else in the US, they had to keep helping people. It's just like saying a soldier at war, you can't run from the battlefield. You just have to keep going head on. But it was really, really quite challenging just to zone it back to our experience.
Yeah.
Um, Clinics shut down, and it just affected also just the private practice. Um,
Oh, don't even go there.
that we could move around as healthcare workers, but some of my clients, for example, were still accepting of me coming around to help support and all of that. But obviously, when the rules of social distancing, masking, and the lockdown became more intense,
Yeah.
majority of people be like, "Oh, can you just stay away, stay back? We don't, yeah, maybe let's see how it goes."
Mhm.
And that just led obviously to loss of income.
Yeah, yeah. So, and beyond practice, we had our family responsibility. Everything became expensive, even in the market, because there was no transportation, and
Mm-hmm.
many of the places of the marketplaces, the store, the shop, and everywhere that you could barely see something to buy around. So, and we had reduced income at that time too, because we already had everything figured out a year before. Like, okay, we
Mm-hmm.
were having our income rolling in, and all of a sudden, I had to be left with just one or two private uh, clients who were still, willing to accept a visit or two per week.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and the future at that time was more of becoming uncertain because we didn't know when the COVID would end. There was
Mm-hmm.
no projection of the end. The scientists globally were working very tirelessly, trying to figure out what to do in terms of vaccine or, but it still
Yeah.
didn't bring us to a conclusion of when COVID will end at that time.
I mean, yeah, it was very hard because when movement stops, income also stops. Absolutely. And kudos to the government. Obviously, they kept the salary going in
Yeah,
terms
of
of
course.
um earners, but also obviously because of all of this um movement stopping and income stopping for a lot of other people, it was hard for people to adjust to like online selling. Obviously, COVID made those businesses eventually boom back home,
Mm, yeah.
but that was for people that were tech savvy or social media presence. But a lot of our relatives and a lot of family, both nuclear and extended, were really, really hit and affected
Yeah.
because they couldn't go to their marketplace. No selling um was moving. They couldn't restock goods and services. Everywhere was shut
Mm.
down. And for example, they call it a black tax, but I don't see it as that. You're responsible for you and the people around you as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and because of that, there's a increase in demand for from people so that they can survive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in turn, because you are in a privileged spot where your government salary didn't reduce, government
Yeah.
was still paying salary at the time, but there was no other source of income. The private practice has stopped and everything has stopped. And
Mm.
the increased demand from support from your nuclear and extended family eating into your reduced income while you're also trying to stay
Yeah. Yeah.
um just made everything unstable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the key reflections is just the fact that COVID period exposed how vulnerable private practice can be without structure or backup.
Yeah, because I remember we were expecting our second child through that 2020 COVID period. Being a vulnerable person, a pregnant woman who is not supposed to be exposed to things like that, uh, I have to be the only one going out, doing all the shopping, doing everything. I mean, close from the office, I'll have to go to the shop. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things to cope with, but in the end, it was more about survival for us, and
Yeah.
then moving forward from there. We not the COVID didn't end when the second wave of trouble hit, which which was NSAS protest.
That wa- that was that was mental, wasn't it? It was around October 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That was also a very big one that we encountered. One of
yeah.
the few protests that I've ever witnessed as well, like
Mm,
on a massive scale that
yeah,
became that huge. We were still navigating COVID, trying to adjust to life, trying to
yeah,
make sense of life. And then we faced another major movement, the protest, the NSAS protest. And for those who don't know, you can pause this right now and just search what NSAS protest was all about. It was all about police brutality back in Nigeria, and the youth were just tired of how brutal the police were and how forceful they are with the young Nigerians.
yeah.
If you look young, you're dressed some certain way, you have
You are a
beards, you have
victim.
dreads,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you've got earrings, you've got a tattoo, they profile you and you could be strip searched, your phone is searched, you are extorted,
yeah.
to the extreme point of being kidnapped, jailed for no reason, killed. Uh, so it was a protest that was against this kind of um, things that were happening to young people. And
Yeah,
with that, it went on to a greater scale that no one expected. And it was
yeah,
happening in different major cities
yeah.
everywhere. There are songs written about it now. Um, about the NSAS protest, but
Mm-hmm.
it was hard for us as well because
Yeah,
as much as there was a lockdown, there was also shutdown in the streets with NSAS,
yeah, yeah,
with massive, and we were working in a university teaching hospital, which is beside the university. In turn, obviously. We're talking about protests that involved young adults, younger people and younger generation.
Yeah.
There was a thick population around us protesting and us having to still go to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
in and around this situation
Yeah.
was really hard.
Yeah. Talking about uh, brutality and experiences of the youth. I think you and I we were once in that position to where we traveled to Port Harcourt together and we were accosted by these guys, the SARS guys, very
hmm
early in the morning when we were making our ways out of the Port Harcourt, and they stopped us and they'll be like, "So where are you guys going? Where are you coming from?" And, you know, I mean, seeing young people behind the wheels and they'll be like, yes, I mean, you have iPhone, you have beards, you cut your hair in a particular style. And
Yeah,
so they just at that moment feel that you are into some kind of shady deals, shady activities. You're not pure. And no, we had to pay our ways out. I mean, that was the only option we had at that time to just, keep our head safe. And we had to then bring out a book. I think I remember you had to bring a book and, pretend to read as we were driving along the road. It was,
it was.
that kind of situation that led to the NSAS
Yeah, yeah.
protest at that time.
It was, I remember that day vividly. It was terrible. You were scared because we are in the middle of nowhere. Like there were
Yeah,
like bush, forest around us. If
yeah,
anything has happened, they would have gotten away with it. And
yeah,
we obviously we left wife and children at home just to go on
yeah,
this trip to also just help people. And then we're just stopped and searched and searched. You have to put a lot of decorations just to prevent people from stalking or to
yeah,
portray the fact that you are into a legit. You have to have a clinical coat by your side. You have the stethoscope around you. You have to not dress in a certain way. You can't wear shorts. You can't. We're talking about in 40 degrees weather. You still have to dress in a certain way where it supposedly looks responsible. Therefore, so that you don't get profiled.
yeah.
And that triggered those kind of the protests we were talking about because the SARS that we are talking is SARS squad, and they
Squad.
became, I don't think they
Yeah,
exist anymore.
they
Um,
integrated them into a different squad.
a different thing, but but at the same time, I think the protest now took a different tone, which it now start endangering the normal people's
It's
lives
live.
when the
Yeah,
protest
yeah,
was ongoing. It was ongoing for like weeks, wasn't it?
yeah.
And it was very, as much as I identified with the cause of the protest, obviously we couldn't be part of the protest because we had to still go to the hospital to work and help people. But at the same time, we started fearing for our lives coming out every morning, driving through this protest
That's
hoping that
right.
you don't get vandalized.
Mm,
You have to put the lab coat, a sticker of the hospital, a stethoscope around your center mirror.
yeah,
Have to
yeah,
talk your way out of being lynched or like being your car being vandalized, which was
yeah. So
um
we probably should be giving a moment of silence to people who lost their life during that protest period. It wasn't a very good experience. We watched
no.
everything on social media and watched on TV. It was, I mean, yes, you can't deny the fact that there were people who hijacked the good intention of that protest to cause social chaos and miscreant behavior and everything. But at the same time, there was no justification for killing innocent people, whatever the case is. Even if they were found wanting of certain crime, there's room for fair trial, and not just going there and doing what was done at that time. And it was really, really, really very sad. Really sad. It's still sad.
Yeah, I mean, God rest all the souls of the lives that was lost during
Amen.
that time, and we hope that we wouldn't experience the scale of loss of lives like that anymore, and
Amen.
hopefully we keep on the right path that Nigeria have chosen. But I think in all of this, there comes the the thoughts around what the future holds,
Yeah.
because I think all of this opened up a whole new reality where,
Yeah.
when you thought you were stable and then you started thinking, and then all of a sudden all of this happened, and you felt like your solid ground might be shaky.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and then you think about what the what should you be doing or be putting in place. Then comes the thought about the NHS, and we started hearing about it, how you could get licensed to practice with
Yeah.
the HCPC.
Yeah. At first, it felt like a huge thing. Like, oh my goodness, how am I going to
Mm-hmm.
do this? Will they accept uh, our practice? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
will I face any challenge trying to get into NHS and all? But the good thing is we've seen people, trying to do it, and then we were asking questions, and
Of
some
course.
already scaled through, some were already
Mm.
successful. I would be like, what? So we can do this too.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I I think that was, yeah, shout out Caleb. Caleb was one of the ones that was really helpful because he went through it
Yeah,
and was able to get it, and that sprung up that belief. We had we had time in our hands because of the lockdown. There was not much patient coming into the outpatient clinic of the hospital. And that got us thinking, researching, trying to dig deeper into um, what people were saying was possible or not. And HCPC was one of them where we felt like, okay, let's see if we could do it. And obviously we had the time. There was not much activity going on in the hospital at the time. At that time as well, ACPC was not digital as it is right now.
yeah,
You still you still have to either type it up or write it up, fill
yeah.
out, print out all of this form, write it all up, and send it through DHS. And just to just to also put it out there, there was no propagation of AI at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be you that did
Yeah,
all the writing. It has to be
right.
you that refined your writing and make sure that it's acceptable and internationally recognized, and be able to
Yeah,
prove with evidences
yeah.
um what you've done.
In the beginning, I was not really keen on this traveling, because I was still fixated on the life that I planned pre-COVID. Private practice, you put everything like
Mm-hmm.
this, and then once you get up to this amount of money, establish a place where you probably move in, and then you maybe reduce your hours in the hospital to maybe part time or something, planned out. And the COVID. So I was still so fixated, like, no, we can still make it work once this COVID is going away. But my wife then was like, what are you talking about? We are looking at the opportunity. I mean, much of my eventual acceptance of, coming to the UK was, born out of my wife's push, thanks to her. And she was like, no, we need to do this. I mean, look at Mr. Kenny. He's done it. I mean, you guys have, come all the way, and we have to try. Then that was when I started trying to write my supporting documents, writing all my experiences and my practice. I think you already got your license before I
Uh,
started writing about mine.
yeah, I mean, was a it was a very intense time where you have to it is sometimes it's hard. It's easier to talk about things, to write down things is harder. And to put all your thoughts and your experience into writing is very hard. I guess maybe that's why we've not written a book and we're just doing a podcast because it's easier to talk about it than to write it down. But I think it was harder. But by God's grace, it was as soon as I sent the document off through the DHL, the only thing that delayed it was references. Was people not responding, MRTB and all of this other, not
Yeah.
responding to the reference that was asked from them that I had to chase
Mm,
up. But all in all, it was a smooth sailing. It took a while,
yeah.
but yes, I got it. I think we would probably just not because talking about this NHS thing will probably take another episode to talk about
Yeah.
how the whole journey of securing a job, how difficult or hard it was. Um, but I think COVID, lockdown, protest, everything shaped my mindset
Yeah.
about thinking or chasing this life that I'm living now. It
Yeah.
was
It,
never, I was always the Nigerian guy. I know I was going to make it in Nigeria.
yeah. It was a test of our strength, I would say, because assuming COVID didn't come, the kind of people we become now, kind of practitioners we've become now, wouldn't have surfaced. So it's that period was a test of our resilience and how adaptable we can be in disaster preparedness. It later came to be like a course of study or an area of research in occupational therapy. I remember Elaine Tayo was doing some kind of research at that time about disaster preparedness. And that opened our eyes as well. Like this COVID opened our eyes to how best OT can be of service in disaster situation. So, of course, who knows when another pandemic will
Who knows? It's
hit.
just that period pushed it pushed us to think bigger and differently. And I think, like I mentioned, there was a whole different plan prior to COVID, and a whole different plan or life that we're living now, which obviously we'll still talk about a lot more in the coming episode. But this just speaks to anyone. If you're going through a period of sad dating right now, just know that sometimes those moments shape your biggest decision.